Hey, what's going on, everybody? This is Hunter King, Blind Eye himself, owner and proprietor of Blind Eye Media, a small internet firm on this here internet. And this is Blind Eye Live for Friday, April 9th. I'm feeling a little under the weather, so if I sound a little stuffy, I'm going to try and keep the energy up, though. But I'm probably going to run the show a little shorter today, and I might experiment with trying to, or keep this like maybe closer to an hour and a half rather than 2 hours, at least in the early going, or the next little while. We'll see how that goes. Because yesterday's show went entirely too long. There's no reason for me to be going over 2 hours. So yeah, so today I'm going to keep things a little simple. We'll hit some news stuffs, for sure. Well, sorry, I'm trying to change something. And there we go. Thank you for finally doing what I want. But yeah, so we've got Deshaun Watson news. Big Deshaun Watson news. We've got, stuff in the case. Because there was a hearing earlier today. We have, we'll probably hit the ESPN headlines. There've been a couple of, well, at least one signing that I know of, maybe two signings of note since yesterday, or at least, well, one of them I saw an article. I'm like, well, I didn't see that in the headlines. I figured that would have been something the last week or so, but whatever. So we'll talk about that, and then we'll get into the NFC South Draft Primer. That's going to be a fun division, I think, to talk about, because you've got the reigning champions, and they can literally do whatever the heck they want for the most part in the draft. You have the Saints, who have been perennial contenders, but year one without Drew Brees after 15 years of excellence, and a Super Bowl win. And you've got, let me think here. You've got the Carolina Panthers, who are in year two of their rebuild with Matt Rule there, who have just traded for Sam Darnold. And then you've got the Atlanta Falcons, who were bottom of the division last year, but their offensive talent or the level of offensive talent they already have. New coach Arthur Smith, who turned the Tennessee Titans, normally uninspiring offense, into a bulldozing, efficient offense. Basing your offense around a power run game. Not supposed to be able to be done, or these days. But Arthur Smith did it with Derrick Henry and Ryan Tannehill, and had one of the most efficient passing attacks in the league. Maybe not the most power, or maybe not the biggest counting stats, but in terms of on a per play basis, the Titans' passing offense was actually pretty incredible. Pardon me while I adjust my camera some more. So yeah, we're gonna get into that. Let's pop open. Let's do this. All right. So we were at ESPN.com. Let's see what these headlines say. So we'll get to the Watson thing here in a bit. Oh yeah, that NCAA tournament official. I don't know if any of y'all heard about the tourney official who collapsed. It was apparently due to a blood clot. He is okay, or at least it seems that he is okay. We'll get into that one. Let's see. Oh, I forgot about that one. Yeah, we're gonna talk about that. We'll save that for boom. So we're going to jump to. Let's start with the Watson case. So the judges in the hearing today. Well, let's start this way. So yesterday, Watson's attorney Rusty Hardin filed a number of motions to basic or 20 of the 22 lawsuits against Deshaun Watson were filed under the anonymous name Jane Doe. The issue there would be, or as I put yesterday, that anonymity means that Watson and his attorney don't know the actual identity of the accusers. Therefore, he cannot make a complete or competent defense because he would be speculating on all of those lawsuits about who the plaintiffs were. So I don't know if they filed motions for all of the anonymous people yet, but I know that, well, let's get into the article here. So 2 judges have ruled that most of the plaintiffs suing Deshaun Watson must identify themselves. The rulings from 2 hearings Friday cover 13 of the 22 lawsuits filed against Watson alleging sexual assault and inappropriate conduct. Prior to Friday, only 2 women had gone public, which I think was somewhat strategic because Busby was going to, or attempted to use that as reason to keep these people anonymous. But we'll see that later. I don't know why they led with the second hearing, but during the second hearing held in the 113th District Court, plaintiff's attorney Tony Busby and Watson's attorney Rusty Hardin agreed that 9 of 12 women would publicly reveal themselves or reveal their names by Wednesday, after they told Busby they would do so voluntarily. Regarding the other 3 women, Judge Rebecca Sultan Collier, Rabia Sultan Collier, granted Hardin's emergency motion regarding the release of their names. During Friday's first hearing in the 270th District Court, Hardin had accused Busby of using the women's anonymity to kill the reputation of his client. Busby argued that allowing anonymity is common in cases dealing with allegations of sexual assault. Yes, but most of those are criminal cases, typically. I am not a lawyer, just someone who's done a lot of research. And also, in most of those cases, the victims are minors. Busby said Ashley Solis, this is what I was mentioning earlier about him making a couple of these people public already. Ashley Solis, who personally gave her statement for the media almost 2 weeks ago, or around 2 weeks ago, publicly identified herself earlier, or I guess earlier this week. I guess was that really only Monday? I guess that was actually Monday. So yeah, man, for some reason I felt like that was Monday before last. Has received death threats, and during the second hearing, he shared an example of threatening messages sent to Solis. Which, don't send death threats to people or whatever. That's one, that's awful. Two, you're going to feel really stupid if it turns out that she was actually telling the truth. But also, even if she's not, most of the time when this is going on, this isn't someone even that, the person being, or the man being accused in this situation is a very prominent public figure. I'm going to assume that his family and friends are sensible enough to not send anything stupid in her direction. So this would leave this up to one of his fans. Don't make death threats on account of public figures. That's just stupid. Like, you don't know this person. I don't care if this is negatively affecting the Houston Texans or if he just happens to be one of your favorite players and you can't believe that he did this. Don't send death threats. Don't send threatening messages. One, that makes you look bad. Two, if you're really wanting to help Watson out, it kind of makes him look bad too, to a lot of people. For some reason. I mean, once again, this has no bearing actually on Watson himself. Unless it turns out it was a burner account and he sent the threats himself. But guess what? I'm sure that didn't happen. I mean, it's Deshaun Watson, not, Brian Colangelo or Kevin Durant. And even then, they just use burner accounts to defend themselves or insult people they didn't like, not send death threats. Anyway, but her receiving threats is still not an excuse for the other people to remain anonymous or herself to remain anonymous in these complaints by law. You do have a right to face your accuser. Busby asked during the first hearing that the woman's name be released to Harden and his legal team, but that they should not make her identity public. Which, fine. Because, honestly, well, I'd actually be okay with that because the public doesn't necessarily need to know all these details before court, but the problem is, and the judge in the hearing is, we're going to get to her opinion here in a second, where it's kind of, or where she doesn't call Busby a hypocrite, but her words basically call Busby's logic hypocritical because he's sitting here not wanting people out in the press to be defamed or threatened or all this other stuff, or, harassed. We can't go, it's like his client's credibility and their reputation needs to be protected, while he publicly puts out a bunch of information, releases lawsuits in a manner or in a certain manner, to destroy the defendant's character. Kind of hypocritical. So we'll get into that. So Judge Dedra Davis disagreed, saying Busby's legal team might be getting an unfair advantage in the case because of the use of media coverage. Because of his use of media coverage. Not the use, but specifically says his use of media coverage. We need a balance of interests. a balance of interests is required for both parties. What that means is this court is not here to help one side. The court is here for justice to be done. And we don't know the truth of this case. We don't know all the facts. We don't know anything. There are allegations, none of which we have access to evidence, da-da-da-da-da. This hasn't gone through the court proceeding. So both sides have equal rights in the court. And they have the right to, equal resources, but they have to be treated equally in the court and in this case. And Busby and his clients absolutely are using media coverage, and he has strategically done things the way he's done them and released things in the media the way he has to hurt Watson publicly before a trial even begins. And this is what it happens these days. This has happened in the Derek Chauvin case. I'm only bringing this up as an example. I'm not getting into that case. It's not sports related. The only reason I'm bringing that up is because this case is sports related, and I see a common thread with a lot of public cases. There is a group of people that want a certain outcome, and the media chooses a side, typically the side of the plaintiff. And they spend all of their time and energy talking about the case, framing things for one side. Because if they don't get their way, they want people to be outraged about it. And what ends up happening is the case happens and the facts start coming out, and it turns out things are either not the way the media, or it turns out things aren't the way the media painted it, whether it's that it's more of a muddy, gray case, or it turns out most of the facts fly in the face of what they've been reporting. This has been happening for years and years and years and years. But it's been really exacerbated probably about the last 3 to 5 years. And at this point, in this case, you see 2 women judges. It's like I bring that up because in some cases like this, people don't, or the media has cast aspersion on having male judges because they don't have the right frame of reference to deal with these kind of cases. These are two women who both ruled in, or honestly positively for Watson's side, and in Davis's case, basically saying that, or accusing plaintiff counsel, Tony Busby, of unfairly using the media. Busby and Hardin also agreed that the 22 lawsuits could be consolidated in the 113th District Court for any pretrial matters. Hardin had filed the emergency motion Thursday saying Mr. Busby's use of anonymous lawsuits violates Texas law. Yeah, this is stuff I've read already. Because this is an updated article. So yeah. So that's the big update in the Deshaun Watson case. And this does not necessarily mean that the other women who are still anonymous will stay anonymous. They have more time to deal with that because all of these suits weren't filed the same day. So that means they have or from what I understand, that means that Watson case. I'm going to move into this one because, so I was talking about U.S. women's soccer yesterday. And this kind of, in a way, dovetails because this is about activism, particularly activism coming from women's sports, the women's sporting worlds. So Cheryl Reeve, Nafisa Collier, Nafisa Collier of Minnesota Lynx call on NCAA to take action for transgender athletes. So, these are two former college basketball players who are now playing professionally for the Minnesota Lynx, and they are calling, calling on the NCAA to take action for transgender athletes. So, this is the thing, though, when it comes to transgender athletes. They're all male to female, meaning they're all of these are biological men who are trying to participate in women's sports, meaning they have a biological advantage built in. Stronger bones, like greater bone density, greater muscle mass, and muscle efficiency. Which is why you see 6 foot, or this is why you see 5'9" Nate Robinson able to win multiple dunk contests in the NBA, and deny Yao Ming at the rim, who was 7'6". But Brittany Griner at 6'8" and maybe the best athlete in the history of, or at least vertical athlete in women's basketball history, in an empty gym showing off for ESPN, bricked 2 dunks before finally hitting one in an empty gym. This is, once again, and I say this, not demeaning women's athletics. I'm painting a scientific picture here. So these women are coming forward, calling on the NCAA to, let's see. Oh, so it's Minnesota Lynx head coach Cheryl Reeve and forward Nafisa Collins have joined current and former NCAA athletes and LGBTQ alphabet advocates in calling on the NCAA to take action in response to legislative measures restricting access to athletics for transgender athletes that are being considered and enacted across the country. 56 measures have been filed during the 2021 legislative season, according to some some director of the Human Rights Campaign, which I can say this about the HRC. The Human Rights Campaign markets themselves as a human rights campaign or as a human rights organization. They're not a human rights organization. They are a LGBTQ plus organization. They lie particularly to young college kids on college campuses. I know because I ran into them 10 years ago, or almost 10 years ago, during my freshman year of college, where they told me they were fighting for human rights abuses around the world, and painted a picture. And the person who painted this picture to me used one example of LGBT stuff, but made it sound like they were talking about, I was under the impression they were talking about human slavery, human rights abuses in international countries and conflicts, things of that nature. Except when so I pledged several, I think it was $5 a month for a period of time to this campaign because I thought it was, something worth supporting. Should I say something that needed to be supported? Lives were at stake, which I'm sure they will tell you that that's absolutely true. But it turns out that they lied to me and that everything they did was LGBTQ related. And so I stopped my pledge, and they would continuously call, even though I said I'm done, I'm not giving any, or I'm not supporting y'all. To the point that one of their people who called me when I said this cussed me out, called me a bunch of horrible things, and told me that I should go hang myself. So I don't support the Human Rights Campaign. Arkansas, Tennessee, and Mississippi have signed their respective measures into law. Good on those states. Because we need to protect women's sports. We need to protect the integrity of women's sports. And we need to protect women in certain contact sports from severe damage or like potential severe injury. Except what they decide to respond with, what's really harming women's sports is an overall lack of investment, whether in resources for female athletes, opportunities to coach, or lack of pay. Reeves said. Reeves said, the notion that the motivation for transgender athletes is to gain scholarship or competitive advantage is a false narrative. Well, one, yeah, they're absolutely trying to gain scholarships because, I mean, they're trying to play college sports, and it's the best way to guarantee you're able to play is to get scholarships or competitive advantage. Maybe that's not the total intent is to have a competitive advantage, but they do have a competitive advantage. It's not a false narrative. Trans inclusion makes our sports, our teams, and our communities stronger. Yeah, literally, it makes a women's team stronger biologically because you actually have men on the team. I mean, biologically speaking, you have male athletes playing on women's teams in this scenario. This is stupid. And wants to talk about what's harming women's sports is a lack of investment. This, and this. It's like, there isn't a lack of investment. There is a lack of revenue to invest. Putting more money into something doesn't mean it will just overnight make more money. The women's college athletics are subsidized by mostly two men's sports. Some schools the baseball team makes money, but typically at every school, and that's not even every school, because some schools I don't even know if they make a profit off of their athletic departments, but your the football team, which is a men's sport, and the men's basketball team typically are your money makers for your school. Some schools have really good baseball programs. They make money. There might be a couple women's softball programs that make money. I believe that UConn women's basketball makes money. I believe that Tennessee's women's team used to make money. I don't know if it still does. But for the most part, not just the women's sports, but most sports in general, their budgets are subsidized by profits from the football and basketball teams, mostly the football teams. So the schools are already investing more than you would say financially, which college sports aren't all about the finances. I get that. So, but at the same time, you can't just throw tons of money at something that's going to be just a massive sieve of money. Just like they were complaining about training facilities being unequal between the men's and women's tournaments. A lot of that's because the men's tournament makes in 2019, the men's tournament made almost $900 million in profits. Or I believe it was profits. Basically, made over almost $900 million. The women's tournament lost several $million. It was either $2.5 or $3.5 million lost. That's a negative investment. Like, I'm sorry, but most business people aren't just going to, continually invest millions of dollars into something that, doesn't make any money. That like they're not going to continue to just lose money on something. But we want these athletes to have a platform. So the people are taking a loss. That doesn't mean that we should take bigger losses on it, though. And once again, these colleges, these are state institutions. And I'm sorry, but the vast majority of people don't want their daughters potentially getting brutalized in certain sports that have a little more physical contact, brutalized by biological men. And their tax money is going to these schools, these universities. She also uses the term lack of pay. I'm sorry, you don't get paid big money for stuff that doesn't make money. I mean, to some degree, everyone who is involved in sports and is getting paid to be involved with games should feel privileged that they're getting paid, a livable or more than livable salary at all. And she's getting paid this woman particularly is the coach of a WNBA team, a league that is subsidized tens of millions of dollars every year by the NBA, revenue generated by male athletes. Which, it's not even just that they're male, it's that their work is being subsidized by the work of other people. It would be like, to me, it would be like USA men's gymnastics asking to be compensated out of the winnings or whatever of the women's gymnastics team. Because from what I'm pretty sure that the U.S. women's gymnastics team is much more well-funded. They're much more sponsored because more people watch and pay attention to that. I know because my sister was a former gymnast. Not at the Olympic level, but she did do some USA gymnastics camps. So let's see. Let's move in further into this. I consider transgender women my teammates, not a threat, Collier said. The NCAA has to take action and withdraw. And here's my thing. This woman here saying this, Nafisa Collins, doesn't have any transgender teammates. There are none. She doesn't have any transgender teammates, so I don't get what she's getting at here. The NCAA has to take action and withdraw all athletic competition from states considering... Okay, they've got to... And see, this would just be another reason to get rid of the NCAA if they even try to do this. They can't do this because, one, some of these programs, so these three states that have already signed, Arkansas, Tennessee, and Mississippi, well, this is where Arkansas, the University of Arkansas, University of Tennessee, University of Vanderbilt, University of Mississippi, Mississippi State, all five are SEC schools. This is the biggest money-making college football conference. Vanderbilt is a recent national champion in baseball, one of the nation's best baseball programs, national champions in baseball. The University of Tennessee is one of the most prominent women's basketball programs, women's softball programs, one of the most prolific track schools, men's and women's. A historically relevant football program, even though the University of Tennessee kind of has sucked for a while, except for a couple seasons over the last 15 years. National champions in 1998. Tons of big name players, NFL Hall of Famers have come through that program. Peyton Manning. Ole Miss, you've got Archie and Eli Manning for their football program. Ole Miss, Mississippi State, good football programs. Sometimes, I think Mississippi State's had a couple good baseball teams in recent years. Arkansas's baseball team's been pretty decent recently. Basketball team was a 3 seed in the tournament, or I think it was a 3 seed. I think it was a 3 seed. They had a really good season this year. Like, these are money making institutions for the NCAA. That's not happening. And that would be a detriment to women's sports in general. This is the thing. Well, they need to stop stuff. So you're going to stop these women athletes, like women's sports, from happening in those states because those states want to keep them as women sports strictly. The NCAA removed the championship events from North Carolina in 2016 because of the passage of House Bill 2, a law that required all people to use bathrooms in accordance with their sex assigned at birth. Sex assigned at birth. You're not assigned a sex at birth. You're assigned a sex because of your DNA and your biology. Because of what genitals you have. I can't believe, this is stuff you learn, in grade school. In March, 550 student athletes wrote to the NCAA to denounce the bills being filed. The letter implored the NCAA to take action, saying the NCAA must speak out against bills that I'm just done. I'm done. Current NCAA guidelines created or enacted in 2011 stipulate that transgender men may compete in the women's category as long as they have not begun hormone replacement therapy, and that they must compete in the men's category after beginning HRT. So what that means is transgender men, so women becoming men. Which, that makes sense if they haven't, started taking any hormones or anything, and they're just cross-dressing. They're just cross-dressing. They're still women. They start taking hormone therapy. They're still women. They're just women who are chemically harming themselves. Because what they don't tell you is these hormone therapy treatments they run the side effect of giving you severely increased cancer risks, among other issues. Transgender women may compete in the women's category after going HRT for 1 year, which is absolutely retarded. In championship events, these guidelines must be upheld for all athletes. Which in 2011, and this is the thing, with these transgender athletes, this still hasn't come up a lot because, well, for the most part, there aren't that many transgender athletes because there just aren't that many transgender people. Although in the last few years, transgenderism has become extremely trendy. The NCAA Board of Governors is meeting this Friday, and the legislation being filed across the country concerning transgender athletes as well as voting rights is on the publicly available agenda. So, and this is another thing. I don't understand what voting rights have to do with college sports, but okay. But anyway, this is getting to be insanity. Should transgender people be allowed to compete in sports? Sure. But I think we need to set up some kind of system specifically for them because one, women transitioning into men cannot, I mean, they're just not going to be able to compete on the men's level. And don't bring up that boxer or that woman boxer who has transitioned into being male. She fought someone he fought someone that wasn't a boxer. Like, had never had any kind of fight. Like, it was a joke. Like, they're lining up people this person could potentially beat. And we've seen, like, in the horrific instance of Fallon Fox, the transgender former male Navy SEAL turned women's mixed martial artist who has lost a match to a woman by submission, I believe it was, because the person just was a better fighter. That person, after the fight, basically said that they were eventually they were scared for their safety during the fight. Fallon Fox has on 2 occasions cracked the skull of their opponent, their female opponent, because they are that much more powerful than they are. Chris Cyborg who was a powerhouse women's fighter, ridiculously powerful women's fighter, who is still fighting and is transitioned to more of a submission style. But, for most of her career was a knockout artist. I don't think she ever cracked another woman's skull. This should just go to the scientific, or to the science at this point. We know human biology, and regardless of what we want to think we can do or what we feel should be able to be done, our biology doesn't lie. The science isn't lying to people. People just want to ignore what science they want, and they want to pick and choose. They make a religion around this idea of science, and then they create what science means, is what they're doing. They have what they determine is the science, even if it's unscientific. So that rant over. We'll get into some NFL headlines here. Did I? No, I did not. Let's click on a few of these articles and get away from subjects that make my blood boil. So Trey Lance is going to be having a second pro day, just like Justin Fields. Let's see, I talked about Bowie already. Oh, this is something I missed. Nike and Beats by Dre have they have halted their sponsorship deals with Watson. Deshaun Watson, because of allegations. And this is my thing about allegations. Someone comes out with an allegation, which this is more credible because there are lawsuits being filed. This isn't just someone saying stuff in the media but not actually doing anything about it. But still, these are allegations that have not been proven true, and Watson's losing sponsorships because of it. I don't know whether that should be the case or not. Just saying. So this was a signing that I missed somehow. Malcolm Butler, whom the Titans released a few weeks ago, has signed with the Arizona Cardinals. So the Arizona Cardinals bolstering their cornerback depth here, which is a smart move for them. Let's see here. Seattle Seahawks re-signed Demarius Randall, former Packer who they picked up last year, and they're moving him from safety to corner. Randall is flipped between safety and corner throughout the years. Randall played cornerback for his first 3 seasons with the Green Bay Packers, who drafted him 30th overall in 2015. He has also played safety and some nickelback, meaning nickel corner. I sure hope he's not a Nickelback fan. He's not blasting that through his stereo. Most of Randall's 35 defensive snaps last year came at safety. He appeared in 10 games. He played 35 snaps in 10 games. That's 3.5 snaps a game. That's bad. Mostly on special teams. So, after joining their practice squad in September. It's not clear the Seahawks see Randall as an option at nickelback or on the outside, so they're not sure where they see him. He's 28 years old. Well, I mean, he's 5'11", 196, but if I'm not mistaken, he's kind of long for 5'11". I mean, the Seahawks do like their corners over 6 feet. But yeah. So, Demarius Randall to the Seahawks, some kind of something that everyone would have missed if it had happened during like the height of like the first week or two of free agency, but now there's no signings going on. So, I will take this as a good jumping off point to get into today's draft primer. So we are going to be doing the NFC South today, which means we will be starting with the Atlanta Falcons, who have the 4th pick in the draft. As I do, I go from who is picking earliest to, or I guess the worst team to the first team in the division. So Atlanta's picking number 4 overall, and for a lot of people, this is where the draft starts. And what we mean by this is where we're not sure what's going on. What we know is that Trevor Lawrence is going 1st overall, and we are confident that Zach Wilson is going 2nd overall, and that Mac Jones, a little less confident, but Mac Jones is going 3rd overall. But what we are fully confident is quarterbacks are going 1, 2, and 3. Which means that the intrigue starts with Atlanta at 4. So, Atlanta, needs-wise, their defense, regardless of their free agent signings, they can draft basically anything. The thing for Atlanta is there really aren't any defensive prospects worth the 4th pick. Now, they could trade down, which would be if a team wants to move up to 4 to make sure that, they're in a position to get, a quarterback. And it could happen on draft day, depending on which quarterbacks go 1, 2, 3, a team could move up. But they'd be moving up a ways. And I don't know if Atlanta would want to trade down that far, necessarily. I personally think that at the end of the day, Atlanta's probably going to stay put. And I talked about this, or I think I've talked about this already, but if I was the Falcons at 4, I'd take Kyle Pitts and create just an insanely devastating triumvirate of Pitts, Calvin Ridley, and Julio Jones, with Hayden Hurst as a great option as my 2nd tight end, and Russell Gage is a solid slot receiver. And they could even take a, slot type receiver later in the draft. There are plenty of them this year. But at number 4, I'd go with Kyle Pitts. If they don't go with Pitts, then I think the choice would be an offensive tackle. I don't think they should go quarterback. Matt Ryan is going to turn 36 this year, but I'd say he doesn't have like some insane injury history. I would say he's got at least 3 years left of being the guy he is, minimum. Maybe 4 seasons. Which the argument for some people is, well, and Matt Ryan is locked in for the next 2 years because of his guaranteed money. The next 2 years of his deal, he like all the money is guaranteed. Like they're gonna have to pay it, so it would be stupid for them to like they just can't move on, and they shouldn't. He's a really good quarterback, and Arthur Smith comes from that Kyle Shanahan tree. That offense treated Matt Ryan really, really well when Kyle Shanahan was there. They almost won a Super Bowl. If Shanahan had maybe leaned a little more on his run game at different stretches, or just been a little less weird with his play calling in the second half, they probably win that Super Bowl. Which the argument is, yeah, but even so, you draft that quarterback, you draft a Trey Lance or a Justin Fields, you let him sit behind Matt Ryan and work out and you develop him, and you let Fields work out some of his little mental things, you let Lance get up to speed, this and that. And then when Ryan's contract's up in 2 years, you still have 2 years before those guys' fifth-year options, and even then you've still got a relatively cheap year on that if they're good. Because with Matt Ryan and all that offensive talent, you shouldn't be this bad. You shouldn't be picking 4th overall again. And I'm like, this is true. But I would rather just deal with that as it comes. I think I have a quarterback who has, maybe he won't win another MVP, but we know he has won one. This guy has a ceiling of a top 10, if not top 5 QB. When people are healthy and he's in a good offensive system, which he should be in a, well, Arthur Smith is going to put Matt Ryan in more play action than he's been in since Kyle Shanahan left. He's going to improve. Arthur Smith is going to help Matt Ryan be better. Look at what he did for Ryan Tannehill, and everyone believes Matt Ryan is better than, well, he was a better prospect coming out. Matt Ryan was a higher regarded prospect coming out than Tannehill, and has always been regarded as a better quarterback. So, and while he's not as mobile as Tannehill, he's not like a statue. I think he'll do really well. So I would give him Kyle Pitts, an elite matchup nightmare player. I mean, the dude is just under 6'6". He's 245 pounds and he ran a 4.44 40. That is ridiculous. So that's what I would do. Get Pitts at 4. If not, maybe take Penei Sewell or Rashawn Slater and upgrade your offensive line there. But I would trade down. I would either take Pitts or trade down. Maybe even draft Jamar Chase. But you've got Jake Matthews at left tackle. You've got McGarry that you spent a first-round pick on 2 seasons ago at right tackle. I would say target offensive line later if that's what you're wanting to do, which I think they do need to target maybe their interior. With Alex Mack being gone, and I think Carpenter is also gone at left guard. They did draft Chris Lindstrom also a couple years ago. He's solid, but I would say at 35, you also have defense needs. So depending on how the board falls, this would probably be a good time for some different offensive line guys. You've got like Liam Eichenberg, who you could kick inside, Jalen Mayfield, who you could kick inside. or you could put them at tackle and maybe kick McGarry inside. But I want to say he's like 6'7", 6'8". I don't know if I'd want him at guard, regardless of how tall my quarterback is. Hmm. Corner's a big need. This would be a good spot for Atlanta to go corner at 35. You've got guys like Asante Samuel Jr. This is probably, I would say, and Asante Samuel Jr. I think would be a good. Well, I think he'd be a good fit anywhere because I really love him as a prospect. Maybe Greg Newsome of Northwestern falls out of the first round. I don't see that happening, but if he was available at 35, if I was Atlanta, I'd snap him up. Asante Samuel Jr. be a good fit. Kelvin Joseph, Elijah Molden maybe in this range. Maybe Eric Stokes of out of the University of Georgia would be a good pick there, but I'm saying you go Asante Samuel Jr. or Kelvin Joseph here, or you get one of the top pass rushers on the board, guys who could be available in this range: Azeez Ojulari, Joseph Asai, maybe Jalen Phillips I've mentioned because of injury concerns. Maybe he slides. Mel Kiper apparently doesn't have, or apparently now has Gregory Rousseau outside of the first round in his grades. So maybe he drops. But Rousseau had 15, and he wasn't necessarily like the most bendy or the quickest edge guy or like guy off at his pro day, but the dude's like 6'7", 260, and the guy, like, as a super raw player in 2019, had 15.5 sacks. I don't know. I think Rousseau's a first-round guy. I prefer Phillips. And honestly, it also depends on your scheme because I think he's clearly a 4-3 end. Whereas some other guys are more versatile. I love Joseph Asai. I don't think he goes as high as Rousseau, but there's part of me that likes him better. But that's just from a versatility standpoint, and because I'm more of a hybrid front 3-4 kind of guy than where Rousseau would be more of a standard 4-3 edge rusher. Not that I'm opposed to the 4-3 either, but I'm more of a hybrid front or straight up 3-4 kind of guy. So, and guys like Osai, Ojulari, Phillips, and even Paye provide more versatility to me than Rousseau. So, but yeah, round 2 I'd probably go corner pass rusher, and then round 3 I would likely, if I didn't go, whichever I didn't draft in round 2, I draft the other in round 3. So if I go Samuel or Joseph at 35, I'm looking at Joe Tryon if he's available, like if he slides down to 68. Emerson Smith out of Northern Iowa. Maybe Patrick Jones II out of Pitt. Those are the kind of... I'd be looking at guys like that. Or if I go pass rusher at 35. When it comes to corner at 68, Tyson Campbell out of Georgia would be a good pick there, in my opinion. Taylor out of Washington. That would be maybe the early start of his range. Maybe Wilson out of Florida in that range. Maybe a Shaun Wade. Although I think Wade's best is a nickel corner. So at 68. And then they have 3 fifth-round picks, 148, and then they've got 2 compensatory selections at 182, 183. I would say for them, day 3, you're looking at running back. You're looking at, I would say, interior offensive line. At least, you need to draft at least one. And then probably another like developmental pass rusher type in round 5 and corner. Then they have 2 picks in round 6. There are a bunch of teams this year who it's like they have no 7th round picks. Like, it's incredible how many teams don't have 7th round picks. Or at the very least, this just doesn't show them unless they've... Oh, this might just be that they're not showing 7th round picks unless they got them in trades. That's probably what it is, because tons of teams get compensatory 7th round selections, so that was kind of weird. So maybe they're just showing, and maybe they're just showing the comp picks. I'm just kind of looking here now just to kind of see, because I'm like, there's been a lot of teams where I'm like, they don't have 7th round picks. Like, what? Holy crap, look at how many 6th round picks. Oh, wait, it's not that they really have that many, it's just there are a bunch of trades. Okay, so we're going to get back on it. So that's Atlanta. Atlanta has a bunch of, like, holes defensively. So if they aren't going to draft a playmaker at 4, they need to trade down. Unless they decide like they think Micah Parsons is that worth it, like at 4, maybe. I feel like there would have to be some teams like willing to move up for certain players. So if I'm not drafting a quarterback and I don't want to draft, and I'm really wanting to draft young defensive talent or an interior offensive lineman, like maybe I just want to plug Slater in as a guard before maybe moving him out to tackle later, or the same with Elijah Vera Tucker, trade down. But I'd go Pitts at 4, and then I would just focus. Rounds 2 and 3, I've got to get a corner and a pass rusher, and the value there should be value picks there for one of those positions, at least one of those positions at each of those round 2 and 3 spots, and then from there, I would say probably or draft a young running back somewhere on day 3, interior line, and then more developmental defensive pieces. Yeah. So from there, we move to Carolina. So Carolina has... So as part of the Sam Darnold trade, the second and 4th round picks they're sending are next year, so they keep all of those, or they keep their 2nd and 4th round picks this year. I think that was probably smart business by them, because they're hoping to... My thing is, I feel like they're hoping that they're going to improve this year, meaning that those picks aren't going to be as high. I don't know if that's necessarily the case, though. That really is going to depend mostly on Sam Darnold and what they can do in overhauling their defense. So at 8 overall, I don't think they're in the quarterback market now on draft day. So here they can either focus on protecting Sam Darnold by getting a tackle to, play opposite of Taylor Moton. They can, if Kyle Pitts is available at 8 because Atlanta doesn't take him, then Carolina should absolutely take Pitts if he's available. Or they can go defense, although the thing is they just signed A.J. Bowie, and they also have signed Rashawn Melvin, so maybe they're not going, or at least not going to draft a corner at 8th overall. And although the value would be there with Surtain, in my opinion. They could draft Micah Parsons and try and get themselves another elite linebacker to carry on the lineage of great linebacking play at Carolina. Shaq Thompson's really good, but, Carolina's had some really good ones over the past 20 years. Chief among them, Luke Kuechly. And, of course, you had Thomas Davis and, what's his name? Something Morgan. Had a really good, smart middle linebacker before Kuechly, and I'm forgetting his name. But let's see, number 8 for Carolina. They've got good pass rush pieces. They got Derek Brown on the interior. Micah Parsons would be an interesting pick here for Carolina, but I would probably go offense here. And so if Kyle Pitts is available, I would take him. If you have DJ Moore, imagine pairing Moore with Devontae Smith or Jalen Waddle. I think Jamar Chase will be gone by this point. So you're going pass catcher or I think offensive line here, personally. Then you move down to pick 39. This would be a good spot for corner. I've talked about several guys who should be available here. This would also be a great spot for offensive line. This would be a great spot for them to take, like, Trey Smith out of Tennessee. To shore up one of their guard spots, or I've talked about maybe Liam Eichenberg or Jalen Mayfield, or more likely Dylan Radins, Alex Leatherwood. At the tackle position. Deontay Brown would be a great, guard, although I think it's maybe a little high for him, but it just depends. Brown's a big guy. He played right tackle at Bama, but he's going to play guard at the NFL level. Although he is really big. He might be one of the... He's so big that he probably could play right tackle. I know people are worried about his foot quickness, but I mean, look at Orlando Brown. And I think Deontay's... I don't think Deontay's as slow-footed as... Well, I say slow-footed. I think he's more athletic than Orlando Brown. But offensive line, second round would be a really good spot for that corner. Nick Bolton would be a solid pick for them at 39 if he's available. And if they say went Micah Parsons or Kyle Pitts at 8, 39 would be a great spot for a wide receiver too. Elijah Moore, Rondale Moore could be available right there. Maybe Terrace Marshall. Give you kind of a bigger guy. Rashad Bateman might be available. Although he came in lighter than a lot of people expected because he was listed at 210 by Minnesota or whatever. And he was saying, I don't think I played. He said, I may have played for a bit at 200, but he said, I don't think I played much over 190, 195. Which changed a lot of people's comps for Bateman. So I've got something under my nail and it's driving me crazy. think I got it. Finally. Maybe. Anyway. Let me think. Who else kind of in that second round range at receiver? Or early second. That's probably it. Whew. So yeah, I mean Carolina can go a lot of different ways because they have a lot of different needs on the roster. But let's say 8. I'm just gonna say at 8. Since I have Pitts, like the Falcons going Pitts at 4, he's not gonna be available at 8 in that scenario. So Carolina at 8. Let's give them Jalen Waddle. No, you know what? Let's give him Micah Parsons. Panthers go Micah Parsons. They take an elite athlete to put in the middle of their defense. Or really, maybe Shaq Thompson continues to play more, or, they have him play middle and you put Parsons in kind of like that, or as that just elite strong side kind of player. Which they could tag team that. I mean, you want to talk about two freakishly athletic inside backers. Or like nickel backers. Like, man. So then at 39, you get the pass catcher. Or you get a pass catcher. And let's go Bateman, maybe at 39. At 73, maybe Taylor or Campbell at corner is available there. Or maybe you go defensive tackle. Maybe Davian Nixon has slipped a little bit. Or maybe you take like a Rashad Weaver who can play inside and out, depending on situations. Or you just get another big old defensive tackle, maybe a Tyler Shelvin, to put next to Derek Brown, and you just dare people to try and run up the middle against you. That'd be an interesting, a really interesting combo. On day 3, it might pay to target a running back with some pass catching ability to go behind Christian McCaffrey. Demetric Felton would be an interesting guy for them to target in that regard in round 3. Or if he falls somehow round 4. Puka Williams would be a pretty good choice. Not as fast as McCaffrey, but he's not as fast as McCaffrey, but he does have pretty good hands. He's not like a receiver playing running back, though. If they wanted to target a slot guy in round 4, maybe Daz Newsome. And then rounds 5 and 6, I mean, just throw some darts at developmental like corners, defensive line, and offensive line depth is what I would do. Round 4 might also be a good spot for a defensive tackle if you didn't do it in, like, say, round 3. Togiai. I'm trying to remember the name of this Louisiana Tech defensive tackle. It might be Mitchell. I'm trying to remember. He might be a good fit. Brown's big. This Mitchell dude's more like plays, I think, at like 285. Kind of a more speedy penetrator type. All right, so we're gonna move down. Let's find New Orleans. All right, so we got New Orleans here. New Orleans, crazily enough, has picks in every round but the fifth this year, and their own picks, I might add, in the first like 4 rounds. So that's actually kind of wild. So at 28, the Saints are going to roll with Winston and Hill as their quarterbacks this year. I'm pretty convinced of that. So they're not going to move up, or if, say, Mac Jones doesn't get drafted third and just falls or whatever, they're not going to, I don't think they'd trade up for him, and I don't think he'll fall to 28. And I don't think Lance or Fields would fall that far either. I think they're just going to roll with quarterback or the quarterbacks they have and feel pretty good about it. And I think at 28, which they could go a few different ways. They could go receiver here to give themselves a really good number 2 across from Michael Thomas. That would be, a Rondale Moore, maybe Kadarius Toney falls to 28, whatever, Elijah Moore, or you get a big, fast downfield guy like Terrace Marshall, who, for a guy who's like 6'3.5", I think it's like 6'3.5", over 200 pounds, he has really good, like, quick, easy acceleration for a guy his height, and really good deep speed. He'd be a really good fit there, but if they're trying to get like a Lance Moore, Emmanuel Sanders type, you've got Rondale Moore, maybe Kadarius Toney's there, Elijah Moore as, really good prospects in that mold. Rashad Bateman would be a good choice. If you don't go receiver, then the Saints are going defense, and there's a lot of different options or ways they could go here. If Trevon Moehrig is on the board, that would be a really good pick for him at 28. And a great just all-around safety that you could pair with Marcus Williams. And maybe replace him if you don't get a long-term deal done with Williams. You could go corner, get yourself another, first-round corner a few years after you hit on a first-round corner with Marshawn Lattimore. At this stage, you'd be hoping either Newsome fell, or you'd be taking. I think Asante Samuel Jr. would actually be a great fit for what the Saints do. Asante Samuel Jr., maybe Kelvin Joseph or Elijah Mold in this range, but maybe a little bit of a reach for those guys. But I like Asante Samuel Jr. there, or Greg Newsome if he were to drop to 28, would also be a perfect fit. Actually, he'd be a lot like Marshawn Lattimore. Otherwise, and they could hit any level of their defense. You've got good linebackers, maybe Jamin Davis is still on the board, or Jeremiah Owusu-Koramoah is still on the board here at 28. That might end up being unlikely for both of them. They're both super talented. Jamin Davis had such a ridiculous pro day, running a 4.37 40, that with great size for the position, that I have him just about neck and neck with Joker now, Koramoah. And Koramoah is so good, and he can be like a slot defender, But I had the Raiders taking him at 17, like when I did kind of a primer. And what this isn't like me mocking players' teams. This is like a primer of like these are positions that I think they could hit, and like where they could get good value, and guys that I think would be good values at those positions. So 28, like I said, probably get some good receiver value. Asante Samuel Jr. if he's on the board would be good value. Greg Newsome at corner. If you're looking at maybe a pass rusher, Christian Barmore or Levi Owuzurike would be guys who could, get after it on the interior for you and improve the middle of your defensive line. If you're looking, you've spent a first round pick a few years back on Marcus Davenport and you moved up to get him and traded a first to get him in 28 or like your 2019 first to get him in 2018. So maybe you don't want to take one this high, but Cameron Jordan's getting up there. And Davenport, there's still questions. Like, he's been somewhat inconsistent. He's had some injury issues. And you lost Trey Hendrickson, who was really sack productive for you last year. Although, if I was them, I'd be glad to not be paying the contract. Although the Bengals, for the most part, it seems like it's only really like a one-year deal. So if it works out and he's really productive for the Bengals, then they've got Hendrickson like basically with no guaranteed money after year one. So if it doesn't work out, well, it didn't work out, and he's gone. But if he does, then they might even be paying slightly under market value. Whatever. Or maybe around. It depends on how productive Hendrickson is, though, with Cincinnati next year. But I could see like Jalen Phillips or Gregory Rousseau being like really good choices. And actually, Rousseau has a little bit of Cam Jordan to him in that he's a little longer than Cam. But I really like Cam Jordan. I think Rousseau, long-levered, powerful rusher who also has bend and quickness to his game for a guy his size. Rousseau would probably be a really good fit, and he could probably really learn from Jordan. So they could, and the Saints have because of how good their roster is still, they have the ability to. I would probably go with a defensive selection. I would probably at 28, I'd go with Barmore on Wuzurike or Asante Samuel Jr. Or if he's available, Jalen Phillips or Gregory Rousseau. Like those guys, like those would be kind of the 5 guys I'd be looking at. Round 2, this is where if I'm going to try and get like a number 2 receiver, maybe I think 60 would be a good spot to grab that. Because it's possible Elijah Moore could fall that far. Like, if he was available at 60, I think that'd be a no-brainer pick. Diami Brown would be a really good pick at 60, I think. Maybe this is where you start seeing, like, potentially Nico Collins come in to things, although I'd feel more comfortable with him, like, in the 3rd round. If you don't go receiver in the 2nd round, though, this would be a good spot for Davian Nixon, defensive tackle out of Iowa. If you didn't get an interior guy in round 1. If you're looking at edge, this would be like Joe Tryon, Patrick Surtain, Joe Tryon, maybe a little early for Patrick Jones. Emerson Smith, Northern Iowa. Maybe Ronnie Perkins still available. I'd kind of doubt that. People seem to really, really like him. And I think Oweh's tools are going to have him go higher than 60th. As like a tools you got to develop. And then I'm forgetting one guy's name that I've been talking about in this range. Cam Sample would be another potential guy, although I don't know if he really fits like the Saints like prototype there, to be honest. So then you're round 3. They've got picks 98 and 105. This would be another good spot maybe for linebacker. You've got I keep mentioning his name, McGorn from Michigan, Monty Rice from Georgia, Pete Werner, Ohio State, are among the guys available at that spot. Round 4. Well, I mean, so like, so those are guys maybe that would be available right there at picks 98, 105. Demetric Felton would be an interesting like weapon if he was available, just because of like how they use Alvin Kamara. You could have those two guys on the field at the same time and really mess with defenses. Anthony Schwartz, if he was available, would be an interesting like kind of speed guy. Dwayne Eskridge, if they haven't gone receiver yet, maybe in this range is a number 2. Tutu Atwell would be another guy potentially in this range. Nico Collins. Chaz Surratt, linebacker from UNC, maybe in this range. Let's see. Then you get into day 3. You know, they've got 3 picks in the 6th, 7th rounds. That would probably be a good place to target some kind of like gadget players. Like the Saints are always doing creative stuff with those picks. Round 4, and also rounds 3 and 4, like I said, linebacker, tight end might be a spot to look at there, like a Trey McKitty from Georgia, Charlie Kohler of Iowa State. Brevin Jordan might be a good pick if they want a good all-around tight end at 60. So there's that. And then we will wrap it up by getting to the Super Bowl champion Tampa Bay Buccaneers. So the Buccaneers can do whatever they want. The Buccaneers have practically no needs. So I'm just going to run down just the few things that they kind of could need. Let's give them an elite interior defensive lineman prospect at 32. I'm just going to say that Barmore or Onwuzurike go there if they're available. If they're not available, then this would be a good spot for one of the top running backs even. Or you get pass rushing depth. I mean, they can literally. I mean, it's hard to project for the Buccaneers because they literally can do whatever they want. So let's give them Barmore at 32. Let's give them at 64. Let's go with Trey Sermon at running back. In round 3, pick 95. Actually, you know what? Scratch that. Scratch that at 64. Scratch Trey Sermon. At pick 64, let's give them a developmental pass rusher. And let's go with Patrick Jones. Or no. Better. Let's go Emerson Smith round 2 at 64 out of Northern Iowa. Really like him. Round 3, pick 95. Let's go Michael Carter out of UNC. He might be gone, but he might not at that point. Round 4, pick 130, or rounds 4, 5, 6, 7. I mean, they can just throw around whatever. Get a developmental corner behind, because you can never have too many young corners. I think they've got plenty of pass catchers, so maybe focus on offensive line depth, front 7 depth at D-line, linebacker, and then I mean, yeah. I mean, but they can just do whatever they want because they don't really have any needs at this point. The Buccaneers are in a really, really nice position. So, with that being said, I'm going to wrap up the show. I thank everyone for tuning in today. Really, really appreciate it. For everybody who's watching after the fact on the archive, thanks. Really appreciate it. If you enjoyed the show, please hit that like button. It helps the channel. If you want more Blind Eye, if you want to be notified of future streams, hit the subscribe button, hit the bell icon next to the subscribe button, turn that sucker to all. That way you are always notified when I go live. And please leave comments, like for archive listeners. I really appreciate the feedback and would love to answer any questions you drop in the comments. With that being said, I hope y'all have a lovely, lovely weekend. I will be back Monday with more. We will continue our draft primer series with the NFC East. So, all you Cowboys fans out there, get ready. Or I guess also Washington football team, Giants, Eagles fans, but I'm from Texas, so. And no, I'm not a Cowboys fan because I didn't grow up in Texas. I'm from Tennessee. No one ever accused me of being a Cowboys fan. That's worse than death. So I hope you'll have a good weekend. No offense, Cowboys fans. And I'll see y'all back Monday.